The NBA All-Star game last night made history, but could the actual game be history? We'll just review and discuss All-Star Saturday night. Baseball spring training is well underway. Connor Bedard scores his first goal since his return from injury. The NHL had back-to-back outdoor games. Yay! And we'll have a special edition of Old School TV Monday, saluting Black History Month. That and a whole lot more as Second City Sports, the Monday edition on Sports Zone Chicago starts right now. Welcome to the Monday edition of Second City Sports. We're live and in living color on this President's Day on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss Lakeem McGee, which is she. I am Cindy Brown. Hey, that's me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You follow my Keita McGee on the Twitter, X, at Keita and IG.
Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. Please follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, X, Instagram, and YouTube. Please subscribe to our podcast. We are at War Media Podcast. That's WARR Media, PODCASTS. We are on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. And while you're at it, please give War Media a follow at WARR Media on all social media platforms on Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
We are unapologetically fun, and we have very definite opinions. If you have any definite opinions during our 2-hour extravaganza, including our next guest coming up shortly, you can always find us at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comments section. Lakino will get them up on the screen for you. But if you decide to troll in order to do something silly, dumb, or stupid, I've given Lakino full powers to give you fools to barely be a boot. But before we begin, we must remind you can catch Sports Zone Chicago right now, live in the living color on Roku TV. That's right. So celebrate the squad and get with the program. Sports Zone Chicago is now available on Roku TV. If you already have a Roku television, just tap on that sports folder and download that Sports Zone Chicago app. If you don't have a Roku television, but you have some handheld devices laying around, iPhone, iPad, iTouch, your Android, your Chromebook, or your PC like Lakina's using right now, just hit up the Google Play Store, download the Roku TV app, and access Sports Zone Chicago through that avenue. So no more excuses. Celebrate the squad and get with the program. Sports Zone Chicago is now available on Roku TV. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Live and on demand.
Anytime, anywhere.
And you know we will provide.
And
a little scratchy today.
Yeah, well, it's okay. Well, it's a little dry today, but yeah, we'll be providing you with our usual great info and great fun here on Second City Sports. Of course, we'll talk about, as Sid said, the NBA All-Star Game. And if you took the over, you already had a nice weekend. And if you listen to us for President's Day for the first time, welcome. And we'll also talk some college hoops as getting down to the wire to March Madness. A lot of stuff happened in the NHL over the weekend, a whole lot more. But first, we're going to go to the Diamond. And Sid, one of our favorites, is now with us. So introduce him, please.
Yeah, he covers the Chicago White Sox and the Chicago Cubs in baseball at large, MLB at large for CHGO Sports. We had him on here once before. Now we welcome him back at spring training. As I mentioned at the top, is underway for all 30 Major League ball clubs. Here is the one, the only Mr. Jared Wyllys. Jared, welcome back to the show, my man. How are you?
It's good to be with you guys and exciting to talk some baseball again. It's been a while.
All right, Jared, I'll save myself the pain of the White Sox. We'll get on them later. But let's start with the North Siders and talk about the Chicago Cubs. Of course, they picked up manager Craig Counsell from the Milwaukee Brewers. They did decide to show David Ross to boot after failing to make the postseason last year. What intangibles does Craig Counsell brings to this ball club for 2024?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the big question because – David Ross, for whatever faults he did have as a manager, and there were some, wasn't necessarily bad at his job that you would expect that they'd be out looking for a replacement. But the big difference with Craig Counsell is it's kind of like when you get the opportunity to go out and get who really arguably is the best manager in baseball, you gotta take an opportunity like that. And I think what the Cubs are banking on is they looked at what Craig Counsell was able to do with the Milwaukee Brewers with a budget that was much smaller than the Cubs have had, rosters that were never quite as talented. And yet year after year, he was either getting his team to the playoffs or at the very least, just kind of a thorn in the side of the rest of the division. And so they recognize that he's able to get a lot out of, less talent. And so the hope is that when you give him a team with a much deeper roster with more talent on their squad, the hope is that that's going to translate into he can do the same kind of thing with the Cubs with the advantage of a bigger market, more money to spend, and a deeper roster. So we'll see if that actually proves to be the case. But that's really, short answer why they went after this guy. It boils down to that.
And I think also another big thing is if you saw his comments over the weekend, I'm talking about Craig Counsell, he wants to try Christopher Morel on third base, which I've been saying, I've been saying for years that he's probably where he needs to be, kind of need more specialist. So what do you think? Could he perhaps maybe, or do you see him still kind of moving around a little bit? So what do you think about Morel, going to third, starting at third base at the very least?
Yeah, I think that this is at this point in spring training, this is them doing their due diligence about trying to see if this is going to be a realistic option for him defensively. Because he's the kind of guy, as we all know, the bat is there. And so you want to get his bat in the lineup. And so if you can find him a regular spot defensively that can help make that happen, then all the better. Because otherwise you are sort of dealing with like what we saw David Ross have to do last year, a little bit more of moving him around, finding spots, which leads to less consistency at the plate because he doesn't get the kind of regular playing time that he would get if he was starting at third base, for example. So I think it's a wise move on the Cubs' part, on Craig Counsell's part. Get him the looks now and, in February before they've even started their spring training games. And then, of course, next week, I think it's Friday, is when they play their first spring training game. Get him those innings out there and see how that looks. So you can assess now if this is really a realistic option and then go into the season on opening day with him as your regular third baseman. I like the possibility, but the reality is defensively, you're always going to be giving up a little bit with him. You hope that the bat makes up for it, but the reality is he's never going to be a Gold Glover, or it's unlikely that he will be given where he's starting from. So that's kind of the trade-off. But all that to say, you want that bat in the lineup. So if that means he's starting at third base most games, then I'll take that.
Let's go to the starting rotation, Jared. Of course, it's headlined by Justin Steele, who had a great year last year until the very end at the end of September. Of course, they picked up Shota Imanaga from Japan. Of course, Kyle Hendricks is back for another run at it. Who else is going to fill out their starting rotation staff for the Cubs?
Yeah, this is where you kind of look to. Number one, I've said it before on the CHGO Cubs podcast, but I'm looking for Jameson Taillon to have a bounce back season. Things were really rough for him last year. He had a few stretches we saw where he looked pretty good, and he showed some of that potential for being the kind of guy that was worth the 4-year contract that they gave him. But ultimately, the end result, the numbers were disappointing with him. So number one, I think if you can get even a decent bounce back from Jameson Taillon in 2024, that's huge for the rotation. After him, that's where you're starting to look to some of these younger pitchers, guys like Jordan Wicks, who we got a little bit of a look at last season. Cade Horton, who hasn't come up to the majors yet, but that's another name to keep an eye out for, where I think part of the reason why the Cubs haven't really pursued starting pitching in free agency is they know they've got some young guys that they really believe in. And so I think that's where we're going to see them filling in that 4th and 5th spot in the rotation. like I said, Jordan Wicks, look for Cade Horton down the road a little bit. And if one or two of those guys works out, they're in pretty good shape.
Let's talk about the back end. Well, the bullpen especially. Albert Alzolay, of course, he was a little bit banged up near the end of the season, and they gave him a little bit of help, in the front of part of that relief. So, how do you think their relief pitching is going to look this year compared to last season?
I think it's going to feel very similar in a lot of ways, where it might be some different guys who are picking up maybe the 6th and 7th inning, some different names, but it's going to feel a lot like it did last year. I think Alzolay has really entrenched himself as their closer. They were, slow to kind of make him that guy, but up until the point where he was injured toward the end of the season last year, he did a really outstanding job in that role. So it starts with him. You kind of build backward from there with the rest of your bullpen. You'll still see guys like Mark Leiter Jr. picking up a lot of innings, and some of those familiar names from last year. But like I said, with the starting pitching, we may see some young guys coming up like Ben Brown who are going to fill in some of those reliever innings as well.
Jared Wyllys from CHGO, who covers the Cubs, Sox, and MLB at large for them, is joining us here on Second City Sports on the President's Day edition. We're live in the 11 color on Sports Zone Chicago. Jared, of course, the big issue in the room is free agent outfielder / first baseman Cody Bellinger. Of course, he's represented by super agent Scott Boras. What percentage would you give the Cubs that they'll bring Bellinger back? And based off that percentage, when do you think this deal will get done?
Well, I'll answer the first part of it. I still think that it's most likely that he comes back to the Cubs. I think that's the most likely scenario. So, better than 50-50 for sure. But I don't know that it's necessarily going to happen particularly soon, because Scott Boras doesn't seem to be in a rush. Cody Bellinger doesn't seem to be in a rush. We saw Tom Ricketts spoke to media just today, and I'm sure you guys saw his comments where it sounds like they're not even particularly close. He said it wasn't even like they're negotiating yet. So he's clear, Bellinger's camp, they're clearly not in a hurry. Which as a hitter, as a guy with his experience, it's not like he needs to go get a bunch of spring training at bats. He knows what he can do. So if it takes another couple of weeks before he signs, he'll be fine. But I do think it's going to be the Cubs. It's just a matter of when they start exchanging numbers, if they can get close to something that works for both sides. It's going to work out. It just makes too much sense for the Cubs. He meets several needs that they have. We haven't really heard a lot of other teams connected with Bellinger very strongly. It has felt all along very much like the Cubs Bellinger reunion is what we're waiting for. But because he's a Boras client, we're going to wait a little bit longer.
And it's not just him. There are some other Boras clients that have not signed, like Matt Chapman, and I know Blake Snell. I know the Yankees are very interested in him. So do you think the Cubs could get in either one of those guys? If not, they'll get Bellinger.
Yeah, I think Chapman in particular is somebody who also would make a lot of sense for them. I mean, it would kind of going back to the question of Chris Morel and third base. Obviously, if you sign Matt Chapman, that takes Morel off of third base, and you might even be starting to think about whether or not Morel needs to be a trade piece for another need that you have. But I don't think that Chapman is somebody that they're really looking at right now, given some of the other moves that they've made, like trading for Michael Busch with the Dodgers. Mm-hmm. He's somebody who, if need be, will play for first base. And that's what they said back in January when they traded for him. And also, if they do sign Bellinger, Busch has played third base, so he can move over to the other side of the infield. So I don't have high expectations that they're going to go after Matt Chapman. And the same with Blake Snell, because as we talked about a moment ago about the starting rotation, I think they are very much banking on some of those young guys coming up and working out. So they've really kind of laid off of the starting pitching market.
All right, Jerry, let's go to my favorite team, the Southsiders, and talk about the White Sox. Looking at their starting rotation, you have Dylan Cease, you have Michael Kopech, you have Eric Fetty that they picked up during the offseason, and Michael Soroka via trade from the Atlanta Braves. So who do you see filling out that fifth spot? Is it Tuki Toussaint, or is it some of those other non-roster invitees that Chris decides to sign from Kansas City? Who's going to fill up that those last couple of spots in that starting rotation for the Southsiders?
I think my eye is still on Tuki Toussaint. He's a veteran. He pitched pretty well in different spots with the White Sox last year. And he's still, I think people don't realize how young he still is. I think he's just in his late 20s. And so in my mind, there's still reason to think that he's going to, at the very least, if he's a back of the rotation kind of guy, which is sort of what they're looking for him to be, you could do a lot worse. And so given what he's done already with the White Sox and in his career, I like Toussaint toward the back of that rotation. I think you mentioned Kopech earlier. I think we all kind of know he wants to be a starter. It's clearly a goal of his, but there are so many times when he has looked a lot better out of the bullpen. And so at some point you kind of have to wonder, for the sake of his career, does he have to just kind of accept that his dream of being a starting pitcher just isn't going to work out? And do you move that guy to the bullpen and then let him really, like, that fastball, which was the big thing when he first got drafted and when the White Sox traded for him so many years ago? That was the big exciting thing, was this guy's got a monster fastball. But as a starting pitcher, you can't necessarily be lighting up the radar gun the same way he could if he was, pitching the 8th inning or something, and he could just go out there and throw a couple of triple-digit fastballs. So I'm intrigued at the possibility that he might still end up in the bullpen at some point.
Now let's talk about my favorite subject, and Sid knows this. Eloy, of course, he was DHing a lot last year. Are we going to see the same thing? He's 27 years old. There's a little bit of wear and tear. So what do you think? Are we going to be seeing more Eloy DHing, or is he going to play outfield? God, I hope not. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think with Eloy, it's kind of like Kopech, where Eloy wants to play the outfield. He wants to be out there, but I think we've seen too much of, he loses a lot of games and loses a lot of at-bats because he gets hurt. Sometimes it's just freak injury kind of stuff, like the spring training when he reached over the wall for a home run and broke a rib and stuff, stuff like that happens. So kind of like we talked about with Morel, you want Eloy's bat in the lineup. And so if having him as your DH on a full-time basis is the way to do that, then I think that's the path that they have to take. So I expect with Eloy, it's going to feel very, very much like last year. He's going to DH, maybe a spot start or two in the outfield. But they really, for the sake of keeping him healthy, you can't have him putting a glove on.
We couldn't agree with you more, Jared. The right field position for the White Sox has been a revolving door for many years. Of course, they made the trade for Dominic Fletcher a couple of weeks ago. Is this his job to lose, or will we see Gavin Sheets, which I hope not, back in right field again? Will we see Oscar Colas, Kevin Pillar? Who's your starting right fielder for the White Sox on March 28th versus Detroit on the South Side?
Yeah, it does feel very much like Fletcher's job to lose right now, because there just aren't super strong candidates to take his place. It's not like you're, those names you just listed, that's a lot of guys where you're like, man, if we see Gavin Sheets in right field, it means somebody's hurt. Something has gone wrong. I'm still intrigued by Oscar Colas's potential. I'm not ready to write the guy off just yet, but if I'm looking at March 28th, opening day, who I expect to see in right field, I don't think it's him. I think it's Fletcher's job to lose right now. So I think when we get to that opening day roster, he's your right fielder.
Who's going to be the closer? Because of course we know Hendricks. He got her last year. He's now signed with Boston. So who do you think is going to be like the reliever, like the closer for the Sox?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. It's a hard one to answer right now because I don't know that they've got an obvious choice to take his place. What we might see is sort of like, on the north side a year or two ago before Ozolai established himself was it may be closer by committee, so to speak, where depending on the situation, depending on who's been used, earlier in the series, that kind of thing, Pedro Grifol is going to have to go to the arm that he think is best suited to close a game that day. And honestly, given, what the White Sox projected record is going to be, I think closing games is probably, I don't know how often that's going to be a big concern for right now, but maybe this is the year where you look for maybe somebody emerges as that person. And sometimes it's somebody that's unexpected. Going back to Alzolay, he came up with the Cubs expecting to be a starter. And this is just the way his career path has worked out. And he's really come to like that role. So, I'm not saying that I think, Kopech ends up as their closer, but if I had to pick a guy based on stuff, I actually don't hate the idea of Michael Kopech closing games at some point once he's adjusted to, pitching that way as opposed to being a starter.
Before we get to the Major League Baseball at large, Jerry, my last question to you about the White Sox. Luis Robert Jr., we saw him healthy for the majority of the year. He became an all-star. He put up MVP-type numbers, but he was overlooked because the team was so terrible. Have we seen the ceiling on Mr. Robert Jr., or do you think he can take his game to another level this year?
Well, I think the exciting thing is I don't think we've seen the ceiling. I think he can get even better because this past year was really the first season where it's like the guy stayed healthy and you saw what happens when he plays a full season. And that's always something that any guy like him can take and build on and get even a little bit better this year. Again, knock on wood, provided that he stays healthy. Is one of the biggest improvements is he really developed into like a lockdown center fielder. He was always strong defensively, but man, the number of times when he'd make plays or in post-game interviews when Grifol or other guys would just rave about the defense that he played in center field. It's an easy thing to overlook given what he can do with his bat. So, for White Sox fans, there's at least one thing to be very excited about in 2024, because I think Robert Jr. is going to have another monster year, and I'm excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, so you got something to look forward to for the season, Sid. There you go.
Yeah, him and Dylan cease until July 31st, but I digress.
That's true. Very true. Very true. Let's talk about the rest of the league, Jared. We saw all the moves the Dodgers have made, with Ohtani and Yamamoto. Do you think it's the Dodgers and the field, or do you think maybe Baltimore with the big trade they made, or Toronto, or maybe even the Mets? Who do you think is like the favorite?
I mean, on paper, at least, it's really hard not to say the Dodgers. You just look at if you look at it across the league at every roster, it's really tough to look at what the Dodgers have and not say at the very least that they're the team to beat in the National League. I do think the Orioles are going to have another strong season. The trade for them, that's a huge Corbin Burns for their starting rotation. That's such a brilliant move on their part. So if I'm picking two teams right now, one from each league, I do really like the Dodgers. AL's a little less obvious, but maybe it's Baltimore's time to really push their way to the top. But yeah, on the National League side, it feels very much like it's the Dodgers and everybody else kind of competing with each other.
I want to ask you about these two teams, Jared, and we're going back to the Cubs division in NL Central. Of course, Cincinnati came out of nowhere last year. Of course, when they brought up Ellie De La Cruz, their shortstop, they didn't make any moves at the trade deadline, but the future is bright for them. And, of course, you have the Pittsburgh Pirates. Of course, the injury to O'Neal Cruz early last year against the White Sox when he forgot to slide properly, which derailed them for the entire season. Which one of those two teams do you think will have, I'm not going to say a bounce back here, but to take the next step?
Yeah, I'm looking at the Cincinnati Reds for that, just because they were only, I've talked a lot this offseason about how the Cubs missed the playoffs by one game. 83 and 79, they were only behind the Diamondbacks by one game. But another game behind them, Cincinnati Reds. So Cincinnati only missed the playoff spot by 2 games. And so we saw a lot of what they're capable of with some of these young guys like De La Cruz, like Will Benson in the outfield, where they had some stretches where they looked pretty close to unbeatable. So I am looking at the Reds to take a significant step forward. And so if I'm picking a division favorite right now, based on what teams have done this offseason, I think I'm going with the Reds in the NL Central. I expect it to be a tightly packed division, but that's the team that I would look for to be at the top of it. Obviously, a lot can change. The Cubs get Bellinger and trades and all that sort of thing, but where things are right now, I actually really like Cincinnati.
Well, keeping in that, the teams take that next step. You have Seattle with all their great rising stars. And you got, Toronto. They kind of took a little bit of a step back last year. You could probably say maybe Detroit might make a big move this year. So who do you think among those teams can make that next step?
Yeah, that's I actually, I've kind of had my eye on the Tigers for a little while now, where they've built up this dynamic farm system with a lot of talent, where it felt like they put a lot of those right pieces in place where they could take a step forward. Obviously, they kind of swung and missed on some of their free agent signings in recent years. Javi Baez has not worked out for them at all. But I still have high hopes for what Detroit can do, if nothing else, to take advantage of what will be most definitely the weakest division of baseball in the American League Central. So Detroit doesn't have to be particularly good to be close to the top of that division. Now, are they're going to be ready to compete with everybody else? Definitely not. But yeah, if we're talking about steps forward, I'm looking forward to seeing what the Tigers can do this year.
Last moment, too, with Jared Wyllys from CHGO. He covers the Cubs, White Sox, and baseball at large for them. He's hanging out here with us on Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid Lakina here with you. Jared, I want to ask you about the Houston Astros. They beat the Minnesota Twins last year before losing to the eventual World Series champions in the Texas Rangers in the ALCS last year. Dusty Baker retired, no longer there. What do you expect from the Astros this year? Do you think they'll still be not dominant like they were a couple of years ago, but do you still expect them to be better than competitive?
Yeah, I still look to them to be competitive. They are going to have a tougher time in the American League West. Like, you mentioned the Seattle Mariners a few minutes ago. Mm-hmm. That's a team that is also like on the rise. That's a team to really keep an eye on. So I think that I still like them in that division, but it's getting to be a much harder division than it used to be. But I still expect the Astros to be competitive. They're loaded with talent. Joe Espada is a good manager because he comes with a lot of his own playoff experience as a coach in that organization. So I still think that they're going to be good, but if they're getting close to the end of their contention window, this is probably the year that that they start to make that step, where they're going to have to look at what it's going to take for the next round of contention. Not necessarily a rebuild, but this squad isn't going to continue to get them there for much longer.
Last question for me, Jared. Of course, I know you're a big Kentucky Hoops fan. With the tournament coming up in a few weeks, they got a big win against Auburn over the weekend, and Antonio Reeves, who is a Chicago kid, by the way, led the way there. I think he's probably not NCAA player of the year, but definitely be all SEC. So, what do you think about the Wildcats' chances in the tournament?
Yeah, they're tough because they looked that Auburn game was, I think, the best I've seen them play all season, because as I've heard them described, it's like a championship caliber offense, but around a 32 defense. They give up a ton of points. And in the tournament, it's just so easy to get a team that's shooting well. And it doesn't really matter who it is. It can be a super low seed, a small school, but if they're shooting well and you're not good at shutting that down, they're going to be trying to play catch up. So I think that there's the wide range of possibilities with Kentucky is there for sure. But if they play like they did against Auburn on Saturday, I like their chances quite a bit.
All right, that has been Jared Wyllys. He covers the Cubs and Sox and baseball at large for CHGO. You can go to allchgo.com to read his articles. Jared, where can people follow you on social media?
They can find me on Twitter or /X at jwyllys, JWYLLYS. And then on Instagram, it's just Jared Wyllys. Just spell out my full name and you'll find me.
Excellent. And we'll definitely going to have you back on over this season. This is some great stuff as always.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And again, we'll talk to you soon. No doubt.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
All right, much continued success and thank you.
Stay safe.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
All right. Once again, that's CHGO's Jared Wyllys. Of course, you can catch this stuff on all city and allchgo.com. Of course, you can catch him on occasion on the podcast, the CHGO podcast. So we're gonna take a really quick break. We're gonna stretch and towel off some great stuff as always from Jared, and of course we're gonna talk some NBA All-Star and what to do. What to do about the All-Star game. I know people are complaining about it, but do they have solutions? Well, we'll see if we can have some solutions coming up next. Lakina McGee, Cindy Brown, Second City Sports on Sports of Chicago. NBA All-Star recap coming up right after this.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I need for the new year.
This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class. These colored pencils, too.
These new socks, they can be a real lifesaver.
I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Hey, this is Dr. J, and I listen to Sean and Maya in the morning.
Welcome back to the Monday edition, a special edition, the President's Day edition of Second City Sports. We're live in Living Color right here on Sports Soul Chicago, along with Miss Lakeem McGee, which is she. I am Sydney Brown. Hey, that's me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, that's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow my Kingdom McGee on the Twitter, X, I can't again, the IG.
We have less than 85 minutes left of this extravaganza. Easy for me to say. We have less than 85 minutes left of this extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio Show. If you have any questions or comments for us, you can always find us at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments to the comments section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you.
Definitely a tongue twister there. Let's recap the NBA All-Star Weekend. We'll start with some of the stuff from Saturday night. Damian Lillard got his first time in his career back-to-back three-point contests. Matt McClung also went back-to-back in the slam dunk. Tyrese Halliburton led the way for Indiana, beating in the skills competition, and of course the game itself, whereas some folks probably would rather not forget. I don't know, Sid. I mean, everyone. Look, I didn't watch this. I'll admit, I didn't watch a single minute of that All-Star game yesterday, because mainly because I wanted to keep my sanity. So. But the East did beat the West pretty easily, and if you took the over in this game, then you probably had a pretty solid night there. 211 to 183 as the East beat the West. And of course, Dame wins MVP, so he had a pretty nice weekend there. Winning the MVP for the All-Star MVP for the first time in his career. But everyone was saying about the lack of defense and this and that. So Sid, I don't know if you watch any of the All-Star festivities.
I did.
Okay, so what's your synopsis of everything?
Here's the thing. I did watch the alternate broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. I did watch the alternate broadcast on True TV. It was Taylor Rooks, Charles Barkley, and Draymond Green. I was looking for like a better term, something salacious that Charles Barkley or Draymond Green would say, but they really didn't step out too much, in my opinion. I know they brought on guest stars like comedian Mike Epps, who I believe is from Indianapolis. They brought on Spike Lee as well, and they brought on some other celebrity. I apologize, but after a while, looking at the game got boring. I started listening to something else, and I had the game on, but I was listening to something else. That's how boring the actual game was. And I know there was a couple of moments in there that you can smile, I guess. Luka Doncic of the Dallas Mavericks missed the slam dunk before Damian Lillard on the next play, uncontestedly, by the way, took a half-court shot and made it. And the crowd went wild on that. But at the end of that game, Karl-Anthony Towns, who's the self-proclaimed the best shooting big man of all time, we'll see about that. But he was doing so. He tried this one in between the legs dunk and missed, and it was just embarrassing. But I heard Giannis Antetokounmpo from the Milwaukee Bucks after the game say that both teams played hard. I love you, Giannis, but what game were you participating in? They look like a glorified open run gym. I'm just saying that the local YMCA, I'm just going to be honest, Lakina. Now, I know some people are going to say, well, they didn't play defense back in the day either, blah, blah, blah. But those players back in the day wanted it more. And I heard saw some people this morning on social media talking about they should do like what MLB did years ago, make it a home court advantage game. No, it's not going to work, people. No. Don't do that. That's why baseball stopped it years ago. It's not going to work. I know television takes a lot of things, but if you try to make it like what baseball did years ago and make it a home court advantage situation where a team wins, that's not going to happen. They tried the charity thing for the last few years, and it worked. And they tried the Team Giannis, Team LeBron James thing. It worked for a minute, but in the long run, it got boring and it got suspect at best. So I don't know if you could do anything at this point, Lakina. It's just another weekend for the players that I know they almost get a week off now because they won't play again until Thursday. We'll give you the Thursday schedule coming up shortly. But with them getting a week off now, Lakina, I don't know what you can do. Maybe you can come up with a solution or two. I don't know, but not enough money is going to make these guys play any harder than what they do right now. And I know the second half of the season is most important, and we get that. But I don't know as much you could do to make them play more competitively. I don't expect it to be a Game 7 of the NBA Finals, no, but I expect at least a better effort than that.
Well, I teased
from
this
last night.
Yeah, I mean, I teased this on Twitter X last night. I mean, look, unless you want to bring the N1 guys, bring them in and maybe have them do tricks. Help have the players help them do tricks. You can judge that, whatever. Try to do it that way for you try the skills competition and this and that. I mean, all the scenarios that you said, Sid. I mean, they tried it, and the charity stuff. I mean, I don't know what more could you have done with that. Same thing, look, you tried the team, Giannis and team LeBron. Like I say, it got boring after a while. I mean, is there really anything you could do at this point? I mean, I don't know. I mean, let's do 3-on-3, maybe. Do like like they do it over there. I don't know. I don't know what else you can do. I mean, yeah. I mean, look, you watch some of those NBA All-Star games in the 80s and 90s, even if you're on YouTube from way back in the day. I mean, yeah. Those little bit, and they only had maybe 3 or 4 days off at that time. Now they get a whole weekend. They don't want to, and to their, the coaches probably don't want them to get hurt. They want to go full out. So you're kind of, if you're the NBA, you're kind of stuck in a rock and a hard place with your All-Star game. I mean, I think with the All-Star Saturday night festivities, I think you should unless you get like some of the, I know Jaylen Brown participated in the dunk contest. He wasn't very good, but unless you get some of the big names to participate in the dunk contest, let the three-pointer is really the big highlight. And Steph Curry beat Sabrina Ionescu, the WNBA star, in that little one-on-one there. But yeah, back to the game itself. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what you can do. Like, let's you do like maybe first like 150 or something like that, and you win, or do kind of like what they do in the NHL, do like a division thing where you have like all 4 divisions represented, or maybe do like a name thing, or maybe have the co-captains perhaps. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know what else you can do.
That might not be a bad idea, I know technically they have divisions in basketball. Why they have them, I don't know, but they need to do away with it. But that's a whole conversation for another time. Maybe we have something, Lakina. Maybe take, I don't know. Maybe take the I know some people suggested North America versus the world. I know that it worked in the NHL in the 90s for those hockey players to get into the Olympics, which eventually worked. But I don't know if it's going to work in the NBA because you have more foreign stars than you do American stars. So I don't think that's going to work. I said, like I said, that they dropped the charity element last night, and of course it's back to East versus West. But you may be on to something, Lakina. You may be on to something.
I mean, like, it's just an idea. I mean, I kind of feel like you got to do something for our people to stop bitching about it. So, I don't know. I mean, I actually watched the replay of the game earlier this morning, and it's just like, oh, okay. Now I see why some people were complaining, but I don't know what can you do to fix it.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. Now, first, you're listening to Second City Sports on the special President's Day edition on the Monday right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid Lakina here with you, reviewing NBA All-Star Weekend 2024 for Indianapolis. Now, the slam dunk contest, Lakina, congrats to Matt McClung. He won it. Even he said after the contest that he didn't think it was his best performance, but he did the same dunks like he did last year, and he won. I thought Jaylen Brown's performance was okay. Maybe it's just me, and it's okay. I expected a little bit better performance from him, especially, I believe it was the first dunk of the finals, Lakina. He tried to do the D Brown dunk, but he did the eyes closed after the dunk.
Yes,
what the heck was that? But I think that was his highest scoring dunk of the night for him personally. I know some people say bring the names, the big names in, bring the big names in. That would help, but you can up the prize money, but most of those guys, if you want those big name guys to do it, they already have their money, i.e. endorsements. So upping up the prize money for them is really is chump change in their pockets.
Yeah, and I think you're not going. And again, they don't want to risk the injury, so you're not going to get that. You did see Jaime Jaquez Jr. Of course, the rookie. They actually had a little bit of a video of him, jumping off, I guess, his chair and dunking. Then he was jumping over Shaq in the first round. That was actually pretty cool. That was actually a nice dunk. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what more you can do. I mean, look, if you want want somebody to jump over both Shaq and Wembanyama, that might work. I mean, we did the Kia thing with Blake Griffin years ago.
I believe I can fly.
Yeah. Which he only went from the front. He didn't go through the whole like in the rooftop. So that was kind of like cheating. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what else you could do about the dunk contest either. I mean, everything's been done. Like I said, get the AO1 guys there. Maybe let them have some ideas. And from what I read, heard the scoring was a little bit. The judges were kind of like a little bit. Stingy with the scoring. They were kind of like Russian judges from way back when. So that might be
some of the
scoring
right was suspect. Let me tell you that some of that score was the scoring was suspect. I know Kenny Smith got railroaded by some people on social media by his commentary about the slam dunk competition, but I don't think that's a bad idea. Like I know you're on social media a little bit more than I am, but we've seen clips of N1 guys, just guys that play college ball in front of the playground. They have better creative dunks than some of these guys in the league right now. So I will bring on one or two guys from the N1 world to compete with these guys for the title. Especially with Matt McClung I know he's in the Orlando Magic system playing for their G League team, but you can have him and one guy and a couple of guys currently in the NBA battle out for next year in San Francisco. I wouldn't mind that. It actually bring more anticipation, more excitement to the dunk contest.
Yeah, I would say like have them kind of like say, hey, I want you to do this, this, and this, or maybe they can demonstrate it and see if the other players can mimic it, or at the very least something, nothing from the trampoline because I know they don't want anybody to hurt themselves, but something that maybe bring them on to kind of like give their ideas a little bit, their own creativity, because we know how some of those guys are with their dunks. So look, it might be something that that might be something that maybe they should think about.
Yeah, I know they tried the spin. I don't know if you remember this, Lakina. I do. Remember 2002, and I believe it was Philadelphia. They tried to spin the wheel thing, and it didn't work.
That. Yeah,
I think he was in that contest. I know Jason Richardson won it, but it was him, Gerald Wallace at the time with Sacramento, Steve Francis, who had a migraine that year. That's why he didn't do well in that contest. I forgot who else was in that contest, but they did the spin the wheel, try to do a dunk from the pass, and a couple of those dunkers could do it, but the rest of the competition was bad, and they got rid of that. So you could update that now with the bringing an and one player, bring in Matt McClung if he decides to defend, go for a 3-peat next year, and a couple of NBA guys. I don't think that's a bad idea.
I mean, if it'll definitely zhuzh it up, I think, because it definitely needs it. So that might be something to look at. The 3-point contest, like I said, I think that's probably the most premier event.
That was the most exciting.
Yeah, I mean, of course, Dame got back-to-back for the first time in his career, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. But I thought that was probably the best part about it. Of course, other than Steph Curry and Serena Nescu, that little battle there. Of course, Curry edged out by 1 point, 29-28. That was actually pretty exciting as well. Yeah, Kenny Smith's commented for what I heard. I think he offended a lot of people, so I'm just like, okay, yeah. But yeah, it was exciting. I heard that Jalen Brunson didn't do very well in there, so I don't.
Yeah, actually, like I said, he had a decent score, but the other players in front of him had a better score. Yeah,
I know Cat did pretty well too. Yeah, so yeah, I think it was him and Dame. I think for the finals.
Yeah, him and Dame was in the finals. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and I think Dame just edged him out by 20 with 20, and I think Cali had like 25 or 26. So they just edged him out.
He did another one on the last basket he made. So that's what made it dramatic. So Damian Lillard, as you mentioned, is your 3-point shooting champion. Now the whole Sabrina versus Steph thing. Call me crazy, and people can get at me. That's okay. I respect both of them, but I thought it was a waste of time, to be honest with you.
That's
just me.
Really,
both those players are great in their own right. I know Sabrina said it at the interview at the end of that competition. It doesn't matter if a boy you a girl or a girl you. If you're a shooter, keep shooting, keep practicing, and this and that. She was correct, but I thought that whole thing was a waste of time.
I actually turned from it because I was just like, okay, like. I think I don't know. I guess it was a marketing thing. That's probably why they did it. But it just seemed like, look, they're both great. Like you said, Sabria's a great player, WNBA player in her own right. We know all the stuff Steph has done, all his accomplishments and championships. So it's fine, whatever. I mean, like, it was more marketed than anything else. I just think it was a little bit silly, but whatever.
Yeah, this is like the 1970s where you didn't see women's sports, and women's sports wasn't around like that like it is now. So if this was the 70s, okay, but like I said, this is 2024, and I don't think there's a need for that. That's just me personally, but.
Yeah, well, all that stuff got about 10 million viewers across TNT and True TV, across all the Warner Bros. Discovery Network. So that's actually about 54% more than last year. So somebody's watching it. So if you're Warner Bros. Discovery, you're kind of like, hey, you know what? Maybe we're beyond to something.
Yeah, it's going to help with their negotiations with the NBA because their contract with the league runs out at the end of next season. So we'll see what happens with that.
All right, listen, Second City Sports on Sports on Chicago. Lakina McGee, Sydney Brown with you. We still got a few more minutes, sis. So where do you want to go to next?
I'm just empty out my thoughts, Lakina. You know, as a basketball fan, as a sports junkie, as a basketball fan in general, I look forward to these All-Star weekends. But the last All-Star weekend I really looked forward to was 2020 before the world shut down. Of course, we were doing our show from downtown. Shout out Jason Pfeiffer as well. RIP to the late, great Lamont Scott. But we were in studio. We had Matt Peck at that time. He was with NBC Sports Chicago. And we had a great time doing that whole show for 2 hours. And the city was buzzy. Yes, it was really cold for one day. It wasn't as warm as it is now for 4 years later in the month of February. But that was the last All-Star weekend I was jazzed about. And you can see the city was buzzing. Of course, we all know what happened when Zach Levine was interviewed that next day, that Friday, on First Take. And, fire guard packs, even the chant was twice. Stephen A. told those people to shut up. But the Bulls fans' voices were heard at that time. And I know time brings on the change, and things change as we go through life and we go through time. But I'll be honest here, Lakina, and I did plan on doing this anyway, which I did on Saturday. I don't know about you, but I went on my YouTube portion of my remote in my front room. I watched all those stay in school celebrations from the 90s and early 2000s. That was the most enjoyable part about my weekend, to be honest with you. I know the one from 91 and the one from 1998 is not up on YouTube. Someone please get it up there. Just saying. But remember, Lakina, back in the day, your All-Star weekend started with that Saturday morning special with the stay in school celebration. I know it turned to Team Up. And then, of course, Read to Achieve when it turned to after the year 2000. I believe it was 2002 when they started that. And then a couple years later, they just stopped it. But it started on that Saturday morning at 11 o'clock. And then you had your All-Star Saturday night on TNT. And then you had the game the next day. I know the NBA was growing at that time. A large part was because of Michael Jordan, even though he didn't do the media stuff, especially after he came back to the game. But it was just a nostalgic time, Lakina. It was the NBA was number one in the United States. The NFL was just starting to catch up, and obviously look at where it is now. I saw some comments on I think it's Retro Dump on Instagram. I believe it was. I don't know. Folks just follow. They do everything from sports to old school TV shows and whatnot. I saw one commenter said that they should bring those stay in school, do something for the kids to bring that back. I said, it's a good idea, but let's be realistic in the world that we live in now in social media and the internet. Remember, we didn't have that in the 90s. The internet started taking off in the late 90s into the early 2000s. And there was no social media, no cell phones back then. But given where we live now in social media, in the social media age, do you think that the stay in school celebrations would be a good idea?
No. Especially here in Chicago, where we know that a lot of the young people here don't go to school, and my mom and I talk about it all the time. They don't have truant officers, they don't have those type of things. Got to keep everybody in check. They held us in check during the 90s and the early 2000s. They just stopped doing it. So it sounds like a good idea, but I don't think that'll work, especially with today's kids and today's times with all the technology, like you said. I just don't see it happening.
It was just that at the time, like I said, the NBA was reaching out to their younger fans. Of course, they were part of the movement of playing hip hop music, which they still are now. But you saw the beginning stages back then. Of course, as I mentioned, they expanded it went from stay in school to read. I'm all for reading. Of course, we read articles every day and reading books and whatnot. And of course, after that, it went from that until get involved with your community, community projects and things along that line, which I thought was a great idea. I was doing that as a part of my curriculum in high school, and I was doing it outside of school as well. Yours truly was doing that as well. So me personally, not to sound facetious or anything, but I didn't need the NBA to tell me to do that. I was already doing that on a personal note. But it's just, for me, it was a nostalgia. It was a great time. You saw that the NBA was growing into pop culture back then. Yes, it was starting in the 80s, but like you said, Lakina, would it be great today? But how would you keep kids' attention?
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe it's just me. I don't know.
Right. Well, no, I think attention spans for everybody are very short now. So if you're gonna say, hey, unless you kind of like give them some incentives, like, hey, you read this many books and go to a game, or if the All-Star weekends in your city, maybe give those kids in those areas some incentives. Perhaps maybe look, if you read this amount of books, or if you do book reports or whatever, I don't know if they still do them, but or e-readers, whatever they do now, and perhaps maybe I don't know, maybe they can come to the All-Star game, perhaps maybe even participate in some of the activities. I think you gotta have to make it a little bit more enticing. And we'll watch you do NBA inside stuff. We gotta do that, Sid, for Old School TV Monday down the line, because
we did before, but we'll do it again.
Right, yeah. Oh yeah, we did do that. My bad. It was a little while ago, but yeah, I mean, I think you gotta have to think of some kind of like new ways to kind of like make everything pop and make like you said market your stars better, market your younger stars, market your Anthony Edwards, your Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. A lot of people wouldn't know, like, wait, they play for Minnesota, they play for Sacramento or OKC. You gotta market, and I think maybe it does a good job marketing, but it feels like they're not marketing their younger guys. We know they market LeBron and Steph and Embiid and of course Jokic and the rest of them, but your next tier guys like the Shai Gilgeous-Alexanders and your Anthony Edwards. I mean, those are the guys that need to start promoting, because soon enough they're going to be taking over the NBA by storm. So you gotta have to market your guys too, and I think that's another problem that the NBA has.
And we had to give the late great Commissioner David Stern credit on that. He started marketing his stars when he took over in February of 1984. Of course, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson was ahead of that. Of course, when Michael Jordan joined the league via the draft in that spring of '84, he was marketing to the nth degree. And we mentioned with those programs for the kids in the 90s, they marketed not just the big time stars, but those stars that they were making their first time All-Star appearance. So I was watching the one in '97. Remember Tom Gugliotta, Lakina?
Yes,
he made his first All-Star game in the city of Cleveland. He was playing for the Timberwolves at the time. The Timberwolves were an up-and-coming team with Garnett and Marbury. He made an appearance on the team-up celebration, and you saw Terrell Brandon. Remember him? He made an appearance on that program. So younger stars making appearances on those programs as well, as long as you're big-time stars. But let's give our new guy now. We had him on at this time last week, Ryan James of WVON's Fundamentals. And he brought up that same point as well, like you just did. Market some of your younger stars like John Morant. I know he's injured this year, but John Morant, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Anthony Edwards, to an extent, Karl Anthony Towns. Even though they're in smaller markets, we've seen guys that play the mid markets and smaller markets get marketed before through the history of the league within the last 35, 40 years. Carmelo Anthony, anyone? Before he went to the Knicks, he was with Denver. Denver's a bigger city. I know they're not considered a small market, but he was a big-time star, especially after what he did in Syracuse for that 1 year. But he was marketed Dwight Howard, Orlando, anyone? So the league has done it before, and like you said, and like what our guy Ryan James last week said on the program, the NBA has to get back to marketing, not just the big-time stars. I know that's what they sell, but it's all those other stars that's going to lead the league into the future. They're going to have to carry on their legacy as well.
And don't forget Ayo DeSumo. I mean, a Chicago kid playing for his hometown team. I mean, hello, marketing. Hello, that's the guy you can market. We know he's great, in front of the camera. So, like, come on now. Or Kobe White too. He went to North Carolina. So, I mean, hello, but what do we know, Sid? I guess. What do we know, Sid? But this is a great discussion as usual. We'll probably have to be talking more about this down the line as well. But Hour number 1 in the books. Hour number 2 straight ahead. As I can see, sports of Chicago. Of course, we're going to go to the college hardwood. As Ohio State says Purdue toodles with their interim head coach, and of course some great games. We talked about the Kentucky's big win against Auburn from over the weekend with Jared, and of course we'll talk some hockey. We'll do that hockey as of course Connor Bedard makes his return known for the Blackhawks, and of course the Stadium Series games that went on, and of course a legend finally got his jersey retired. And of course, Old School TV Monday, and so much more in between. Lakina McGee, Sydney Brown, Second City Sports on Sports of Chicago. A busy hour 2 coming up right after this.
No, I don't know though. I'm scared. I mean, you're
Do you know that you're in my lane? No, not at all. Are you not paying attention? Are you texting? I was just checking in with my mom. I was telling her that I thought we'd be home by 6. It's okay. There's enough time. Just pay attention. I'm not even halfway through my text. There's no way. I'm not even going to look up. My babies are in the car. You have to pay attention. It's just supposed to be a quick text. I'm so sorry.
Hi, I'm Tom Brady, the director of DODEA. September is National Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. The simple act of reaching out and caring for those in our communities is something we all can do. Just being there for someone you care about can be a tremendous first step in getting them access to confidential resources and support that they need. It only takes one person and one small act and 1 minute to make a difference. Let's make a difference.
Move it!
Many will hear the calling. Few will earn the title. United States Marine. The few, the proud, the Marines.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Second City Sports on this special Monday edition, the President's Day edition of the program. We're live in the living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. You can follow yours truly, Sydney Brown, on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80, that's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Keaton McGee on the Twitter, X, at Keaton McGee on the IG.
We have less than 1 hour left of this extravaganza. We call it Sports Talk Radio Show. If you have any questions or comments for us, you can always find us at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comment section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you. And just a daily reminder, you can find us live in the living color, not now, but right now on Roku TV.
Okay, Sid, and we forgot to pay off this tea, Sid. We were talking about the NBA schedule for Thursday. We got so enthralled by our debate about the old NBA All-Star weekends of old. But this is for Thursday, folks, when everyone comes back. You got Orlando and Cleveland at 6. You got Detroit and Indiana at 6 as well. Should be a good one here. You got New York and the Knicks in Philadelphia. That should be a fun one. Brooklyn and Toronto. A good one here in the first game of the NBA of TNT's doubleheader as fans go up against Dallas. That should be a good one at 6:30. Of course, the Bulls host the Celtics at 7 o'clock.
Yeah, you can finish reading out the rest of that schedule.
All right, Houston and New Orleans at 7. You got the Clippers and OKC at 7. That should be a good one. Wizards and Nuggets, Charlotte and Utah, the Lakers and the Warriors as the second game of the TNT Thursday night doubleheader. Should be a good one there. And a good one here. San Antonio, of course, but then Wembanyama against the Kings at 9 o'clock. So, and that's your schedule for Thursday night in the NBA.
All right, now let's get into that college hoops talk. Lakina, we'll start out with our local teams. We'll go to Saturday's action. The Illinois Defiant Illini, unlike last week at Michigan State, they actually win another road game in the Big Ten. They take care of Maryland in a tough battle by the score of 85-80. Jameer Young scored a game-high 28 for the Terrapins, while for the Defiant Illini, Terrence Shannon scored 27 points. The Illini shot the ball well from three-point land in that first half. They struggled in the second half, but they shot the ball well overall at 48%, and they turned the ball over 9 times. And even though they were -5 in the rebounding department overall, they made some key stops in the last few minutes of that game, and they made some big baskets as well.
Yeah, and it was actually a pretty emotional day over there in College Park, Maryland. Of course, the legendary head coach from Maryland, Charles Lefty Driesell, passed away early that morning, and you kind of wonder that, okay, will Maryland, feed off of that? And I know they had a moment of silence from before the game. Illinois, we're like, hey, look, we were big fans of Mr. Driesell, Coach Driesell as well, but we're not, sorry, folks. But yeah, I mean that was a big one for the Illini, and 85 points. Terrence Shannon Jr. made some big shots late for the Illini, so a solid win for the Illini in a probably very emotional day down there in College Park.
And also, too, the Illini were excellent from the free throw line, 32 of 36 for 88%. As we mentioned. They made the big shots when they had to. They made some big shots when they had to. They also made their free throws, and that's the name of the game on any level, high school, college, pros. If you are able to make your free throws, you're supposed to win the majority of your games, and that's what the Illini did.
Yeah, look, well, hopefully they can kind of keep it up as we get closer to March. We only got about a few more weeks left for Selection Sunday, so that'll be interesting there. And I just want a really quick synopsis about Mr. Lefty Driesell. The only coach to lead 4 schools in the NCAAB tournament, and coached guys like Lynn Elmore, Tom McMillan, among others, and just a really great coach. Of course, Georgia State, another team that he took to the tournament, but probably his most remember spots were when he was at Maryland, and of course that game, which is probably the most well-known game in 1974. You had NC State and Maryland, 2 great legendary teams. Of course, David Thompson was in North Carolina State there, and John Lucas and of course Lynn Moore were in the same front court for Maryland. And at that time, only one team could go to the tournament, so that game was for the ACC title. And of course, unfortunately, NC State won that game. Of course, Maryland couldn't go. Unfortunately, there was like 32 teams at the time. So I know you put it all in perspective there. And of course, if you check out Lefty Driesell's induction speech in the Basketball Hall of Fame from I think it was 2019, where he shared a really funny story about him and Coach K. They coached together, they had their battles, and of course, if it was hilarious. He was still very sharp for his age. He died at age 92, but he was a really great coach and an even better guy.
Yeah, of course. Part of his legacy would be what happened to Len Bias back in 1986, and of course he was dismissed because. Like I said, we won't get into all that. Check out that 30 for 30 special on Len Bias if you have ESPN Plus. That gets more deep into it right there. But that left the stain on his record for a while. But like you said, looking all the other accomplishments that he had achieved in the world of college basketball, it should trump what happened with Len Bias. It was a bump in the road. But like I said, he had a great coaching career, had a lot of success, and his memory will never, and his legacy will definitely not be forgotten. It should not be remembered just what happened to Len Bias, but it's bigger than what happened on that tragic day in June of '86.
Yeah, so we'll rehash it. But like you said, the 30 for 30 is on YouTube. So without bias, that's the name of it. I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere. I'm sure it's streamed somewhere as well. So you guys can check that out. We won't get into it, but let's go back to on the court now for college too. Sticking with Saturday's games. UConn sent a big message. They beat Marquette 81-53. Donovan Clingan had 17 points, leading the way for the Huskies. And we've been talking about them for the last 2 weeks, and this UConn team is even better than last year's UConn team that won a national championship, and they're very scary.
Yeah, like I said before a couple weeks ago, this tournament will be wide open as ever. No one expected UConn to win the title last year. They came out on top. Can they do it again? Sure, but I believe it's going to be much more tougher competition this year. I know we talked about the Illini a few minutes ago. Do I see them as a Final Four team? Me personally, no. But the way they're playing, they could get there. It depends on them on their matchups. Obviously, once we get to March Madness, but this tournament is wide open. And I hate to sound like a broken record, but we're going to keep saying this until Selection Sunday on Sunday, March 17th. So get ready, folks. What we have now with not just with the NIL rule, name, image, and likeness, but obviously with the transfer portal going on right now, these powerhouse teams. They look vulnerable more than ever in your middle of the road, your middle of the road schools. I think they had a small advantage in the years past. I think they have more of a bigger advantage now.
Yeah, they do, and they may look. We saw what happened last year. Florida, Atlantic San Diego State, made all the way to the Final Four. So it can happen. Arizona, no trouble with Arizona State. Houston, they got the best of Texas. Kansas got a big win in Norman against Porter Moser's Oklahoma Sooners crew. Tennessee, this is like 33-8 at one point. They had no trouble with Vanderbilt. Duke pulled away from Florida State. Iowa State, they're kind of like inching up right up there with Houston and Kansas. That should be a fun one. They got a couple of big games coming up. We'll talk about that in a second. LSU with a big upset over South Carolina, edging them out. So that was a fun game to watch. Baylor, no trouble with West Virginia. We talked about this game with Jared earlier in the show. UK, Kentucky pulled away from Auburn 70-59.
That's a big win for coach. If he's a coach, John Calipari in Kentucky. We talked about them and Gonzaga a couple weeks ago, almost 2 weeks ago now, meeting up there late in the year in Rupp Arena. Gonzaga got the best in them. We all thought that Kentucky was left for dead in the water, but Coach Calipari is still behind his kids, and if they finish the season strong in the SEC, they can have a surprise. They may have a surprise run in them in the SEC tournament, and they could probably get a higher bid in the NCAA tournament than what we thought coming into the year.
Should be interesting these next few weeks. Of course, we talked about Illinois and Maryland. Of course, Alabama, no trouble with Texas A&M. Dayton, we'll talk about a team because there's a local team here that's right there in their heels. But they did beat Fordham on Saturday. Creighton got their revenge against Butler. Oklahoma State with a nice upset win over BYU. Iowa was actually a pretty entertaining game, oddly enough. It actually pretty was. Iowa got the best of Wisconsin. Wisconsin just they're kind of in free fall right now, but I don't think they should worry too much. Wisconsin, their seeding might be a big, might suffer a bit, but UVA, no trouble. Just edge out Wake Forest. So if you took the under, you had a nice little start to your weekend. Southern Illinois, Brian Horder's guys, upset Indiana State, 74-69. They're right there in the thick of it in the Missouri Valley. And this after everyone was touting Indiana State, they could be a team to watch for. Well, they lost to 2 Illinois teams. So, sorry about that, folks. TCU over K-State, Nebraska. Keeping their near perfect home record alive. Let me see. And that's pretty much it. Some of the big teams. Kansas State beat Northern Illinois. Let's see here. Any other? No, go ahead, Sid. Sorry.
Going back to yesterday, going back to local basketball, of course, Rhode Island loses to Loyola Chicago. The Ramblers get it done by 10, 77-67. Coach Drew Valentine is having his kids play their hearts out for him. They slowly creeping up, and then Atlantic 10. It's going to be interesting how that team finishes off the season and what they do in that A-10 tournament, because I hate to say it, Lakina, you may get an extra bid. I'm stepping out on a limb here. You may get an extra bid, but if you're Loyola, I wouldn't depend on that. You still have to win that, finish the season, regular season strong, and you'll have to win that A-10 tournament. Of course, Northwestern, we talked about on Friday. This was a big game for them on the road at Indiana. Indiana's free falling. The Northwestern Wildcats defeated the Indiana Hoosiers in Bloomington 76-72. Northwestern, they took care of the basketball, as we talked about all season long, Lakina. Chris Collins' crew, they get after you defensively in your chest. They forced 11 turnovers from the Hoosiers. And even though the Wildcats didn't shoot the ball well, like I said, they got on the boards, even though it was a +1 advantage on the rebounding department, 38-37. It was all about defense for Northwestern in this game, and they got some big buckets down the stretch.
Yes, they did. They really needed this win after what happened earlier last week. So that was a good, nice bounce back win for Chris Collins and his crew. And of course, want to go back to Saturday. Stay locally, Western Illinois. They're staying within the striking distance of the Ohio Valley. So they got a nice win against Tennessee Tech. DePaul lost to Providence. I think if you're a DePaul fan, you just want the look. I think at this point, if you're a DePaul fan, you just want the season to be over with. I mean, it can't be over soon enough so you can find a head coach. Look, I know Chris Holtman's out there, but for me, I think as far as DePaul is concerned, I don't want to go into a tangent here, but as far as DePaul is concerned, they need to give whoever they end up hiring, they need to give him all the resources that he's going to need to help recruit. Because you look at where Detroit Mercy, they just got their first win of the season just this last week. You don't want to be in that situation where I know it's not going to be hard. It's not going to be that's not going to happen because you're in the Big East. But I mean, that's just
no day later for you.
Or NIL stuff, for the
or Oliver Purnell.
Look, I'm so pissed. Look, you had Steve Lavin and God rest his soul, Rick Majerus, who won the job before they got to Oliver Purnell, and look what happened. So
yeah,
I know some people say maybe John Shire probably should have gotten the job, but I think if you're him, I think you're in a better situation at your alma mater. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But Ohio State with a nice win against Purdue. I know that, of course, Jake Deaver. Of course, he's the interim coach at Ohio State. So a nice upset win for him and his guys. I know that's their biggest win this season so far. And I know Coleman Hawkins had a little bit of a tweet. You saw that little gift with Skeletor and the Pleasant Day thing. So look, they played. Look, Illinois and Purdue played each other in a couple of weeks. So you better put your money where your mouth is and back it up with all that talk. But I'm just saying.
Yeah. Yeah, a couple of the scores from yesterday's action Sunday. Illinois State gets a big win over Evansville, 86-79. And my Memphis Tigers, Penny Hardaway and crew, they get destroyed by SMU, 106-79. As Memphis still tries to climb back into the top of that American Conference. I still believe that they're a tournament team, but they got to have a stronger finish to the end of this regular season. And they usually do well in the conference tournament, but they got to finish the regular season strong first.
Yeah, they usually do pretty well in their conference tournament. They went always to the finals the last few years. So I think if you're, that this does not help the way they play yesterday. But SMU is one of those teams that when they're on, they can shoot the ball very well, especially from three. So there was really Penny's guys wasn't gonna be able to stop that yesterday when they were on a roll. So not their fault there. But let's talk about this week's games, Sid. As the Second City Sports on Chicago, Lakina McGee, Snoop Brown with you. Chicago State, I guess this is a makeup game. They're playing Indiana University Northwest and NIA school right now. I'm sure it's streaming on their website somewhere. But probably the biggest game of tonight is a top 10 matchup. You got Iowa State, who I think this is like the highest they've been in a long time. They're at number 6 as they face number 2 Houston at 8:00 in Big Monday.
Yeah, Houston, a couple weeks ago, they lost big time at Kansas, in Lawrence, Kansas, against the Jayhawks. They need a bounce-back performance tonight. They're at home. I'm talking about Houston. Kelvin Sampson has those guys in the top 5, and they rank number 2 right now in the country. This is a big game for both teams. I think Houston, I believe, it's a bigger game for them to be dominant and get back on track. I expect Houston to take it tonight. I don't think it's going to be a blowout fashion, but it's going to be a grounded out type of game.
typical Big 12 game here, probably,
Mhm.
and it could come down. It could come down to who finished at the top because Iowa State is like right there behind Houston, the way all the tiebreakers work.
Mhm.
So this could be for like the top of the table in the Big 12 conference, at least for right now. Anyway, we still got a few more weeks before March. Also, too, K-State and Texas at 8 o'clock on ESPN2. So you got a double dose of great Big 12 matchups here tonight, Monday. Going to Tuesdays, you got Tennessee and the Fighting Mike Burmas. I know Missouri has not been playing very well this year, but I'm sure they would love to play a little bit of spoiler because Tennessee is like right there in the thick of it for that number 1 seed, one of the number 1 seeds. So that should be a good one down there in Columbia.
Yeah, Syracuse and NC State will do battle at 6 p.m. on ESPN2. This is a schedule for Tuesday on the ACC network. At the same time, Boston College versus Florida State. Florida State has fallen. They're one game over 500 at 13-12. Iowa and Michigan State will do battle at 6 o'clock. Of course, Tom Izzo's crew up there in East Lansing, Michigan. They did beat University of Michigan on Saturday. Ever since the Illinois game last weekend, a little bit over a week ago, they've been on a roll ever since. They look to keep it going against Iowa in Big Ten play.
Definitely need to keep that momentum going if they want to get into one of those at-large bids. So this is a
Mhm.
this is a big game for both teams in the Big Ten. Now in the Big East, you got a good one here on FS1 tomorrow night at 7:30. You got number 1 UConn against number 15 Creighton in Omaha. So that should be a fun one. It could be a shooting fest, so I probably would take the over. In this one, Baylor and BYU in the Big 12. That should be a fun one at 8 o'clock on ESPN. And I think this is their first trip to Provo, if I'm not mistaken. I'm talking about Baylor, so this should be an exciting game.
Yep. At the same time, tomorrow on CBS Sports Network, number 19, the San Diego State Aztecs will play Utah State. And also at 8 o'clock tomorrow, ESPN2, TCU will battle number 23, Texas Tech. The Red Raiders will be the home team for that one. And at the same time, on Peacock and Big Ten action, Maryland will travel to Madison, Wisconsin to take on the Wisconsin Badgers. I think this is a bigger game for Wisconsin. As you mentioned, they've been slipping lately. Their record shows it now at 17-9. The Badgers need to get back on track.
I know they were at they're at number 4 in that 4 line, with that the top 16, which I don't pay attention to that, folks, because it's gonna change the next few weeks. So I would say don't pay attention to that. Don't freak out if you see one team higher or lower than they should be. It's all gonna sort itself out. I think Wisconsin definitely needs to get this game going here. St. Mary's on ESPN2. They host San Francisco. And Wyoming and Nevada on CBS Sports Network also at 10 o'clock, because this could be an elimination game for the at-large purposes in the Mountain West.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. Now going to Wednesday's action, Murray State will travel to Carbondale, Illinois to face the Southern Illinois Salukis. That's at 7 o'clock on ESPN+. Of course, Southern Illinois is 17-10 on the year. That, of course, they upset Indiana State over the weekend. Of course, in Missouri Valley action, once again, Missouri State at 15-12. They'll host Bradley, who they're 18-9 on the year. That's a big game for Bradley. We'll see if they can win a big game on the road in conference play. And of course, Nebraska and Indiana will do battle at 7:30. Nebraska is 18-8 on the year. As we talked about Lakina all season long, Fred Hoiberg's crew, the Cornhuskers, they're great at home, but they struggle to win a Big Ten road game.
They definitely need this. They want to. I think they're in the tournament, but I think getting a road win would help. So I think this might be something that Fred Hoiberg and his guys really need. Number 6 Duke against Miami. That's at 6 o'clock on ESPN. A good one here. You got Florida. They're probably been creeping up. No one's really paying attention to them, but they've been playing very well. They're at number 24. They're back ranked for the first time in a few years. They face Alabama on ESPN2 at 6. Dayton, of course, if you're a Loyola fan, you're watching this game as they face George Mason on ESPN+. They're right. I think they're about a game and a half out of the top spot in the A10. So if you're Dayton, you're definitely cheering for George Mason. Look, okay, great, Drew Valentine. I was just being nice here. DePaul and Marquette on FS1 at 8 o'clock. Kentucky and LSU. That should be a good one at 8 o'clock on ESPN. Colorado State and New Mexico at 9 on CBS Sports Network, and UNLV and Air Force at 10 o'clock on FS1.
All right, let's go to Thursday's action. in the world of college basketball, if we get the schedule up here,
Oh,
we have one game. We'll have a couple of games in the top 25 on Thursday. We'll have Rutgers at number 3 Purdue. That's at 6 p.m. on FS1. This is for Thursday, and then the late game on FS1 on Thursday at 10 o'clock Chicago time. We'll have number 21 Washington State. The Cougars will travel to Arizona to take on the number 4 ranked Wildcats.
That should be a fun one because Wazoo's been playing pretty well as of late. That's why they're in the top 20. I think it's the first time they've been there. I think since Klay Thompson was there. If I'm not, I might be like a couple years off or a couple years closer on that one. But yeah, that should be a fun one at Arizona. Cause I know they play Arizona close in their meeting in Pullman, so that should be a fun one there. Also, Oregon and Stanford at 10 o'clock on ESPN2.
Yep, and that's your schedule for college basketball for this upcoming week. So enjoy all the action. We'll have the recaps for you on our next show on Friday. Lakina, as we said before, Selection Sunday is Sunday, March 17th. And I believe it's a little bit less than a month away, but I believe it's 3 weeks left for most schools, at least for your big time schools left in the regular season. For some of you, is some of those mid-major conferences, I believe it's 2 weeks. So it's all come down to the wire, and we'll see who separates themselves.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting with that, especially those number 1 seeds. I mean, could be a little bit of a seesaw here. I know I saw where I think right now it's Purdue, UConn, Arizona, and Houston. Those are your number 4 seeds as of right now. But like I said, all that could change depending on how they do in the conference tournaments and how they finish the season, whatever. And some of the bubble teams, if you're a bubble team like a Michigan State or one of the I'll say Boise State, one of the Mountain West teams. I mean, you really need to kind of like get it going these last few weeks to kind of, freshen up the resume, make a good impression to to the committee. Don't have any bad losses, i.e. Chicago State if you're Northwestern. Hope that doesn't come at the price, among other things. So yeah, this is definitely a time of year where you definitely want to beef up those resumes.
Yeah, a couple of the games of note to pass along for Thursday. Of course, Northwestern will host Juwan Howard's Chicago's very own Michigan Wolverines. That's at 8 o'clock on Thursday on FS1. Still another big game for Northwestern as they try to march towards another 20-win season. Chris Collins and crew, their game would be in Evanston. And, of course, at the same time on ESPN Plus, we'll have Gonzaga facing the University of Portland. Gonzaga's 20-6 looking out. Let me ask you about Gonzaga. Do you think they're in the tournament today? Because it's going to come down to them in St. Mary's in a West Coast Conference tournament.
If they win, I know they have a game with them in a couple of weeks. So if they win that game, that could help them a little bit, but they're going to have to win their conference tournaments to get into the dance. There's no if, there's, or buts about it. There's really that Kentucky one did help a little bit, but yeah, they need more quad 1 wins, as they say, and they just don't have it at this point.
Before we close out to take the bottom of the hour break, I want to ask you about Rick Pitino. Of course, he's back coaching with St. John's this year. I know they had another bad loss over the weekend. I was trying to find out what was the big controversy that he started going off on a rant after the game on Saturday. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I guess he went on a little bit of a rant, and I guess because I think they were up by like 11 or like 8 or 9 with about like 2 minutes left, and Seton Hall came back and won the game. And I guess he went on a little bit of a tangent saying that, well, you saw. Oh, look, if you remember when he was with Boston, he said, Larry Bird's gonna walk through a door. I don't know if he said like, Chris Mullin is gonna walk through that door, or Felipe Lopez, go all the way back. Well, yeah, exactly. Or Ron Artest, before before the name change. But yeah, I mean, you recruited a lot of those guys, Coach Pitino. Just saying. I mean, that's a whole different roster, and I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people thought that this was going to be like a good breakout year for St. John's. It's not happening at this point. So, again, hence all the tangents and whatnot. But, I mean, he's 71 years old. I mean, you wonder if they're not going to fire him, but you wonder if this is going to get to the point where he might retire, especially if things don't improve next year, especially because look, I'm sure you saw some of his colleagues. You saw Jim Boeheim, he retired. Roy Wyllys, I should say, and of course we all know Jay Wright retired a few years ago. So I think maybe he's starting to realize that maybe those guys were onto something. I'm not saying he's going to retire because he has too much. I think he has too much pride to do that. But
yeah,
it's yeah.
I know his son is still coaching too, correct?
New Mexico. They're having a good season too, New Mexico, and his style is totally different from his though. Like,
yeah, of course, but
yeah.
Here's the thing. I know he brought excitement back to New York City. I know, as you mentioned, with all those legendary names retiring, recruiting is different, as we mentioned with the name, image, and likeness rule. Of course, the transfer portal has a lot to do with that as well. So, New York City next to Chicago is the mecca of basketball, and I think for him, you're not just competing with the other schools in the area. It's the other schools from across the country that wants those top New York City kids. And can you get the second tier? I think that's the same thing that we're asking for here in Chicago with DePaul, you in particular. But can you get those mid-tier guys to come stay with you and to come to your school and stay?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the issue, and I think he's realizing that it's not going to be very easy. So I know they got great resources over there in Manhattan, but I just think that it's going to be very tough for him to try to recruit, especially those second-tier guys in New York City.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Rick Pitino in the St. John's program. All right, Lakina, we got to stretch. We got to take a 2-2. Take a 2-2. We got the NHL outdoor back-to-back games to discuss. I know you have some other thoughts on the other topics in the world of sports, and we'll continue our series on saluting African American families from the world of television as we do Old School TV Monday. We'll do that and have a whole lot more fun. I'm Sid. That's Lakina. You listen to a special edition, the Monday President's Day edition of us. Oh boy, I hate Mondays. But you're listening to the Monday edition. Yeah, we're listening to the Monday edition of Second City Sports. We're live and in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I need for the new year.
This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class. These colored pencils too.
These new socks, they can be a real lifesaver.
I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Hey, this is Dr. J, and I listen to Sean and Maya in the morning.
Welcome back to the special Monday edition, the President's Day edition of Second City Sports. We're live in the living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. You can follow yours truly, Sid the Kid, on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80, that's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You follow my Keenan McGee on the Twitter, X, I can't going in the IG.
We have exactly 25 minutes left for this extravaganza. We call it Sports Talk Radio Show. So if you have any last-minute questions or comments for us, you can always find us at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions and comments in the comments section. Lakita will get them up on the screen for you.
All right, so let's start locally as we do that hockey for the first time. It's been a while since we've done that hockey, so we're gonna do that right now. As Connor Bedard scores his first goal back from his broken jaw as they beat the Senators 3-2. But a pretty exciting game. Actually, kept an eye on this game, and it was actually like I said, it was actually pretty exciting. And he did have another goal. He was robbed another goal, but didn't count because the Hawks were offsides. But he assisted on the game winner, and pretty a solid win for the Blackhawks.
Yeah, this is the first goal that Connor Bedard has scored as he's returned from his injury of his broken jaw, I believe almost now 7 weeks ago. As we said before, it's going to take the Hawks a while to get back into playoff contention. But I will say this for head coach Luke Richardson, and we said this about him last year too, when they really didn't have any structure. This team plays hard, but they just don't have the talent. They have a little bit more talent now. Obviously not enough to qualify for the playoffs, but you could tell that the presence of Connor Bedard is what makes this team competitive, shall we say, at best. Now, when Bedard was out for the whole month of January leading up into the All-Star break, this team struggled. But you could tell his presence on the ice is very much needed. And could you imagine, Lakina, if Bedard didn't get hurt? I'm not saying they will be right and think of the wild card race or anything like that, but I think they would be a little bit better than what we were than advertised before the season started. And so I know Luke Reichel was sent down to Rockford, and I know they'll probably have a couple of guys come up between now and the end of the season. But you would think that I think they are in the long run, but you think that the Hawks will be going in the right direction, which I still believe they are. But it's still going to take some time. But you cannot hold your head down if you're Blackhawks fans and say, "Oh, they quit" and all that stuff. You really can't say that because the talent is not there. I know Connor Bedard helps compared to last year, obviously, but you would think that the Hawks are heading the right direction. I believe they are, but it's still going to take some time.
Yeah, that's all I can ask for is improvement. And we know these guys, they play hard for Luke Richardson. Luke Richardson is a great motivator. We can have that discussion of whether or not he's the guy that you want to keep as the coach when the Hawks are ready to contend within the next year or two. But right now, I think, for the development of Bedard, getting guys like Nick, veteran guys like Nick Foligno, get him back in the fold, also to Tyler Johnson as well. I think that's going to help. We talked about this last few weeks. That's going to help the Hawks kind of like build a foundation, and that's all. I think that's what Kyle Davidson wants. The GM, build it up, and so we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens as the Blackhawks continue tonight. They go back on the road. They'll take on the Carolina Hurricanes on the road in Raleigh, North Carolina. That game will be at 6:00 p.m. on NHL Power Play on ESPN Plus, of course, locally here on NBC Sports Chicago. So those folks in Carolina will see Connor Bedard for the first time. Now, excuse me, to the two outdoor games in the New York City area, in particular in East Rutherford, New Jersey. Of course, last Saturday night, we saw the Philadelphia Flyers. They lose to the New Jersey Devils outdoors by the score of 6-3. Of course, yesterday afternoon, the New York Islanders losing overtime to the New York Rangers 6-5. Of course, we talked about the NHL's popularity over the last few years with them having these outdoor games, and with the NBA All-Star Weekend taking place in Indianapolis. This was the perfect time for the NHL to have their outdoor games. So, of course, the New Jersey Devils have been one of the surprise teams in the National Hockey League over the last couple of years. Of course, we talked about the Philadelphia Flyers being one of the teams this year, and it was a very competitive game. I'm interested to see what the numbers were for last Saturday's game, because they went up against All-Stars Saturday. And for for the NHL, you have to continue to grow your product and you have to continue to market your product, showcase your stars on a primetime stage. I know ABC and ESPN have a couple of games within the next couple of weeks coming up during the Saturday night primetime slot, and you will hope that you can showcase your stars in those big market teams as well. So they did that on Saturday with the New Jersey Devils and the Philadelphia Flyers. You could tell the energy in the stands was tremendous, and the New Jersey Devils were the better team. They came out on top, as I mentioned, by the score of 6-3. Of course, yesterday we saw the New York Rangers as one of the teams many people are watching out for, as they can contend once again for a Stanley Cup. They beat the New York Islanders by the score of 6-5 in overtime. We saw that the New York Islanders are having a tough time this year. The New York Rangers are continue to show people why they're one of the best teams in the National Hockey League. As I mentioned with the Flyers and New Jersey Devils earlier on the Saturday night in prime time. The energy for this game, which took place yesterday afternoon in East Rutherford, New Jersey at MetLife Stadium, the home of the football's New York Giants and Jets. The atmosphere was tremendous once again. The Rangers fans showed up and showed out. The New York Islanders fans, they have a strong fan base as well. But as far as the teams on the ice, it was no comparison. The Rangers showed their mettle, especially with them scoring the game winner overtime yesterday. Also, what big event took place yesterday in the world of hockey? The Pittsburgh Penguins, despite losing 2-1 to the LA Kings, they retired the number of one Mr. Jaromir Jagr. Of course, if that name sounds familiar to you, if you're an old school hockey fan like I am, he teamed up with Mario Lemieux, the current owner of the Pittsburgh Penguins, for back-to-back cups in 1991 and 92. Of course, the Pittsburgh Penguins team in 92 beat the Chicago Blackhawks, sweeping them at the old Chicago Stadium in 92 to capture back-to-back cups. Jaromir Jagr was a tremendous player. He played for a couple other organizations, including the New York Rangers, toward the end of his career about 16, 17 years ago. But Jaromir Jagr was one of those prolific scorers in the past with those stars back then with Mario Lemieux and Eric Lindros before injuries unfortunately ended his career early. But Jaromir Jagr had speed, he had vision, he had the net to crash the net, and made things happen with the puck on his stick. So Jaromir Jagr finally got his due with the Pittsburgh Penguins yesterday, retiring his number 68, which goes up in the Raptors in Pittsburgh at PPG Pants Arena. So the shout out to the Pittsburgh Penguins organization for giving him his proper due as being one of the greatest Pittsburgh Penguins ever. Of course, Sidney Crosby, who plays for the Penguins now, he'll get his due once he hang him up in a few years. Now, going into the leaders in the Eastern Conference as we head down toward the last couple months of the regular season. Of course, the trade deadline is at the end of this month. Of course, you have the Florida Panthers leading the way in the Eastern Conference, followed by the Boston Bruins and the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Tampa Bay Lightning. They're starting to make a run, so we'll see what happens with them. Of course, in the Western Conference, the Dallas Stars and the Colorado Avalanche, who lost in last year's Stanley Cup final, Stanley Cup playoffs, rather. Of course, Vegas is right there. You're defending Stanley Cup champions. They're right behind the Vancouver Canucks in second place in that Pacific Division in the Western Conference. Vancouver Canucks, also one of those young teams that are surprising the league this year in the NHL. Of course, they're led by Elias Patterson, and they still have some of the other young players that have been doing well this year. So I think it's more wide open in the Western Conference than the East. The East is still tough, but In the Western Conference, as I mentioned, you have Vegas, the defending St. Louis Cup champions. You have Dallas, who's always right there at the end of the season, and then you have Colorado trying to rebound what happened. Them not defending their Stanley Cup last year, but they're still right there. So we'll see what happens with that. The Los Angeles Kings fired Ty McClellan a couple of weeks ago. Looks like they're trying to get back on track. As I mentioned, they beat Pittsburgh on the road yesterday by the score of 2-1. So we'll see if the LA Kings can get back on track and position themselves up for a playoff run coming up in a couple of months. You're listening to Second City Sports or Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid Lakina. Hopefully, will rejoin me coming up in a couple of minutes. I want to go back to a couple of topics at the top of the show when we had Jared Wyllys from CHGO on. But first, we'll talk about the stadium situation or not situation when it comes to the Chicago White Sox. Of course, the late news dump came on last Friday afternoon as Jerry Reinsdorf, the reports came out that he proposed for taxpayers to pay $1 billion for a potential new stadium in the South Loop in the 78th unofficial neighborhood of Chicago in the South Loop there between Clark Street and Roosevelt. As we talked about before on this program, if the White Sox can use any boost right now, it is a new stadium, even though the one they're currently playing in right now on the south side of the 35th Shields. It's been revamped over the last several years, but it's really nothing structurally wrong with that stadium. I like going there personally because I'm a White Sox fan, but, you know, Reinsdorf is trying to wheel and deal with that being up in 2029. As one of the questions we asked before, as Lakina rejoins me now, you asking the city of Chicago citizens and the citizens of Cook County like myself to pay for $1 billion for their new stadium, but the public is on the hook for that. You trying to keep your money as an ownership group. That's going to be a problem. I'm just saying.
I mean, it's gonna be like I started laughing at like, yo, is Reinsdorf high? Is he high that does he? I mean, look, I'm serious. Does he really think that Chicago's going to fit the bill for that? I mean, look, the Governor Pritzker already told him no. Like, look, you don't even ask. Like, I don't know what Mayor Johnson's thinking is. I'm sure a lot of people are not going to be very happy about that, but I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think you're going to have $1 billion, for a public. No. We're not doing it. I know some people say, well, he kind of fleeced him before. That was under different ownership, and I don't know if I don't want to speak for Sox fans. I know Sid could speak more to this, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is just a stalling tactic. Like, they're not going to get $1 billion, not in public funding. No, not happening.
Yeah, I think the taxpayers will have to flip the bill in some way. But as I said just a moment ago, if we're going to have to, we as the citizens of Cook County and the state of Illinois, will have to pay the majority of this. It's not going to fly. As we talked about before, Reinsdorf used the tactic of moving the team to Tampa back in '89. Of course, he got that sweet deal from the late Governor Thompson on the stadium which they play in now. As I said before, nothing structurally wrong with that stadium. It's being revamped over the years, and it's a nice place to go to. I'm partially biased because I'm a White Sox fan, but if you build a stadium, we talked about this before. Like if it comes to fruition with a new stadium being built in the South Loop, of course, it all comes with the hotel tax as well as the city tries to recover, just like every other city around across the country following COVID. But it's going to bring the value of their franchise much more value than it is right now. And you're going to bring outsiders in. Perhaps you're going to bring in a bigger fan base because it's a new stadium, new digs, and he's going to attract people to spend money in your ballpark or around that area. And it's going to benefit the city of Chicago. Obviously, it's going to benefit the White Sox, as Reinsdorf does care about his legacy and try to get it right. But if you asking the public to flip the bill for this, and you're going to try to keep your money in your pocket as little as possible, it's not going to fly. It's just not going to fly.
Well, and we know how stingy he is when it comes to not spending his own money. So I know there are two teams and two fan bases that would probably attest to that. So it's not going to happen. So we'll see how that goes. What this goes with the, I'm sure there is going to have to be some public funding, but not no $1 billion. Maybe a quarter of that, if that much. But yeah, it ain't happening.
Like I said, if it's the public is responsible for the majority of that, it's not going to fly. I was listening to Peggy Kaczynski and our good friend Dion Miller from ABC7, their weekend show over the weekend on ESPN 1000. I think it's going to be a race to who gets their new stadium first in the Chicago digs, if you want to say. I still believe that Arlington Heights is in play for the Chicago Bears, but you got to get the citizens of that city and the surrounding suburbs involved, obviously, to voice their opinions to get what their thoughts are. But whoever plays in the city of Chicago is unfortunately going to be just one team. I think the odds are the Bears, even though the suburbs are still a better destination for it, especially what the league wants them to do with hosting. Now, for the Bears, it's not just hosting the Super Bowl, but getting the Big Ten football and basketball championships in that stadium. Use that stadium. I believe it's going to be indoor, not a retractable roof, but it's going to be an indoor stadium, just like SoFi is out there in Los Angeles, which is going to host the 2028 Olympics, by the way. But that's the potential new Bear Stadium, which I still believe is going to be in the suburbs. It could be used all year round. Look what's going on with Wrigley Field. And remember, the Ricketts family, when they bought the Cubs franchise a little bit over a decade ago, they used their own money to rehabilitate Wrigley Field. So I think Ryan Stone can take a page out of that book if he wants that new stadium in the South Loop. I'm just saying. But as far as the Bears are concerned, you can use what the Wrigley Field does in the month of December and January, using it for people to skate and all that stuff. You could do that with the stadium tours, with that potential new Bears stadium. So there's a whole lot more you could do with that Bears stadium. But I think, as I said before, and I'll say it again, if the Bears can control their own stadium, own their own stadium outright, they're going to have to move to the suburbs, because where they play at right now, the Chicago Park District owns it. But if they really could want to control the dollars, control what they can do, is they're better off in the suburbs. Because where else are you going to build that potential new stadium in the city, Lakina? They're not going to share it with the White Sox. And I don't know what more they could do south of the old McCormick place. Where is he going to build it within city limits?
Well, and I think the tax write-off, that's the reason why nothing's been official with Arlington Heights. It's been the taxes. Like they, Arlington Heights doesn't want to cover any of the taxes. The mayor there already said, look, we're not covering the taxes here. So you're kind of in your own free fall. So I'm sure there's a lot to be decided here. So we'll see. I'm sure, look, this is not going to be the last we're going to be talking about either one of these potential stadiums in the city. So it'll be interesting to see what one or both these teams do. So it's going to get a little bit tightening of the purse strings, if you will, as I can see sports. Sports on Chicago, Lakina McGee, Cindy Brown with you. So we got just enough time for Old School TV Monday. So I was alluded to Black family sitcoms, and next up is
Mo to the E to the. I won't sing the rest of the theme song. We're saluting the UPN, i.e., the United Paramount Networks, the former networks. There's a Monday TV sitcom, Moesha. It was a sitcom that aired on UPN from January 23rd of 1996 until May 14th of 2001. The series starred R&B singer Brandy Norwood as Moesha Denise Mitchell, an African-American teenager living in the upper middle-class neighborhood of Leimert Park neighborhood of Los Angeles. It was originally ordered as a pilot for CBS for the 1995-96 television season, but it was declined by the network. It was later picked up by UPN, which aired as a mid-season replacement. It went to become one of the biggest success for the former network and one of the greatest hits over the course of the network's entire run. The series was a joint production for UPN by Reagan John Productions and at the Jump Sons Productions in association with the Big Ticket Television production company. The overall series focused on the Black life of an upper middle class family through the eyes of a typical girl named Moesha. Her father, Frank, a widower and Saturn car salesman, and later owned his own dealership, Brothers Saturn. Mary D., which played by Shirley Ralph, was the vice principal at Moesha's high school, much to Moesha's disapproval. The series was created by Ralph Falquar, which along with the writing team was Sarah Finney and Vita Spears. The settings of the show included the Mitchell household, teen hangout, The Den, in some cases, Crenshaw High School. The school attended by Moesha, Kim, Nisi, and Hakeem. The sitcom was also set in Lamar Park neighborhood of Los Angeles.
Yeah, probably one of the the breakouts sitcoms from that year and on that network. It kind of helped build the UPN network and a few other shows, and we'll get to at some point in Old School TV Monday. But I think with Moesha, it kind of like sort of changed the trajectory because there wasn't a lot of shows that focus on Black teenage life at the time, especially from a more, I don't want to say they were rich, but they were kind of more like upper middle class, like you said. Sis. So it was actually pretty cool. I think the concept was, look, Moesha's dad remarried, and she and her brother had to adjust time to stepmom and such. And definitely the breakout star was Countess Vaughn. I think it was definitely one of those moments where, of course, she would go on to her spinoff with Monique. Of course, the Parkers. Some would say that after some of the original writers left Moesha to do the Parkers, things kind of went a little bit haywire there. Probably one of the more famous episodes, of course, that with Mo and Q.
Fred Joe, star of the rap group the Onyx.
Onyx, yep, and I'm like, okay, yeah, no shade to Fredro, who actually is still producing and writing hip hop songs still, but I was like, okay. Lamont Bentley, of course, God rest his soul, played Hakeem. To me, I think once they teased, of course, he and Mo got together. I think that's where the show jumped the shark. That's just me personally.
And also, too, I watched an interview with Shirley White, which she's doing great work with Abbott Elementary on ABC, which is currently airing on. I heard her in an interview not too long ago. She said, remember Dorian, of course, Brandy's brother in real life, Ray J. Norwood, when the storyline was written that was actually Frank's son. Yeah. I heard Shirley Ralph in the interview. Remember, she left that show midway through that last season, which was season 6. She said it was a feel-good story about the Black family in America, and it was all feel-good. Yes, they dealt with issues with homosexuality and teenage pregnancy and drugs, but once she changed the course of the dynamic of the Mitchell family, I had a problem with that, just quoting Shirley Ralph. And that's why she left the show. She's like, all this feel-good stuff, and you're throwing a monkey wrench with that storyline, even though it was people were dealing with that at that time, still dealing with it within today's society. She didn't like that change. So that's why she left that show.
I don't blame her. Honestly, I don't.
Me too.
I don't blame her. And of course, you talk about drugs. Miles doing drugs. We didn't see any lead up to it, so that didn't make any sense to me. So some of the choices that the writers made were kind of like, and I think we were left hanging too. Like as she said that last season. I mean, we were left with that cliffhanger. We never. Of course, I think the show had kind of like lost a lot of its rays. That's why UPN canceled it and such. So we never really got any answers to some of that big question there, and then a cliffhanger who was pregnant. But I thought it was a good show. It had its moments, but the Ray J thing, I think really, and I know their mother, him and Brandy's mother, Sonia, had a lot to do with that allegedly. I just read that I don't know that for sure, but that's the alleged. But
Yeah, also you had a bunch of guest stars on the show. We mentioned Fredro, star of the hip hop world in the famous rap group Onyx. Remember Andrew Keegan in that first season of Keena? He went to star in a couple of movies, which was in Julia Stiles and Mekhi Phifer. He was in that movie, but he was also in a couple of the TV shows. Remember, he had guest stars with Boys to Men, where Brandy was in college. You also had Emmanuel Lewis, a.k.a. Webster, from back in the day. He was a guest star in that first season. Of course, you had Johnny Gill on there as a guest star. You had a couple others too, which I can't remember right now. Usher. That was a very good storyline back then. He was a college recruit that was trying to recruit him to go to college. He was in a couple of episodes. And
Kobe?
You had remember DMX? Yeah, Kobe. Yep, a young Kobe Bryant. Yep. Yeah, he was in there. Of course, DMX was in there as well. Yeah. So you had a bunch of guest stars that helped that show grow to become one of the best shows of the 90s.
Yeah, so I know I do can see the repeats. I know it's streamed like in various. I know TV1 owes some of the air some of the episodes. I know it's streaming. I know on Pluto TV, and if I believe it's on Max as well, if I'm not mistaken, or Hulu. It's on one of those streaming services. So yeah, so you can stream the show and Netflix too, I believe. So yeah, you can stream the show anytime, anywhere, pretty much.
Yes. So for Black History Month for Old School TV Money, we salute the 1990s sitcom Moesha. All right, Lakina, close us out.
You can follow my Keenan McGee on the Twitter, X, and on the IG.
You can follow yours truly, Sydney Brown, on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80. Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. Please follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms, Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube. Please subscribe to our podcast at War Media Podcast, WARR Media, PODCASTS. We are on all podcast platforms, including iHeartRadio app. And while you're at it, give War Media a follow at WARR Media on all social media platforms. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
We'd like to thank Jared Wyllys from CHGO Sports from coming on with us today to help with spring training previews for both Cubs, Sox, and baseball abroad. Make sure you catch Second City Sports live and in living color every Monday, every Friday from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Once again, please catch Second City Sports live and in living color every Monday, every Friday from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time right here on Sports Zone Chicago.
Make sure you catch Sports Zone Chicago anytime, anywhere on Roku TV, whatever device you got. You've got the Roku app. It's all right there. Whatever device you have, you can catch our show, Sean and Maya, the Smokefellas, and a whole lot more. Just type in Sports Zone Chicago. It's all right there for you.
And you know we will provide.
All right, enjoy the rest of the All-Star break from the NBA. Catch some college hoops as it's getting down to the wire. Then, of course, some NHL as well. Of course, the Hawks are back at it tonight, and so much more. Enjoy all this gorgeous weather we got coming up here in Chicago. For February especially. So first, Sid, I'm Lakia. Be safe out there, folks. This was Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago, and we'll see you Friday.
When I say team, you say up. Team up. Team up. Holla.
Oh, brother.